familial backup or anything like that. So, we all have to live. But I think it's something you sort of have to like mature out of over your career. But any young artist who's pursuing, getting some notoriety or selling something, I don't begrudge that. I think that's, a necessary evil in your evolution as an artist. But it's now I feel that I'm more. I feel that in my own practice now, it's very. It's more of a kind of ritual almost. I'm trying to create the correct conditions in the studio for things to emerge, and it's not to be too corny about it. It's kind of, there's a certain reverence to that. You have to sort of respect that you're serious about what you're doing and that you're going to be open-minded and listen to what occurs. And then I don't think those kind of ideas of I wouldn't even know what was successful and what wasn't. I've got to be honest. I don't know what a good one is and a bad one is. I value everything, because a quick scribble has an immediacy, and something photorealistic has a skill. To me, it's all one emergence from saying that if there's a fire, I'm going to save the Caravaggio rather than the doodle. So it's
you say that you don't know the value of one versus the other, but you have to have an opinion that they're all good, even though they look so different. One of the hardest things as an artist is figuring out when a piece is done, right? And part of that is, getting to a place where it resonates with you. You have this gut feeling that it's complete, or, beautifully incomplete, right?
Mm-hmm.
That gut feeling is probably coming from some, system of rules that you probably don't even have knowledge of. I mean, I feel like we keep dancing around, Plato's allegory of the cave, right? That we don't know our place in the universe because we can't step outside of ourselves. But what inputs are training that gut inside of you? Like, do you consume mass amounts of media, mass amounts of art? Because when I look at your work, it doesn't seem insulated. It seems like you're reflecting the world around us.
Yeah, I take a lot of input to have that much output, for sure. I'm seeing exhibitions and looking at things all the time and reading and so on. But I think in terms of completion and knowing which ones to select, it may come across as if I don't suffer a curatorial anxiety or something, about these things, and I do. I'm always like, when I have an exhibition, I want the maximum diversity, and to make sure I'm not saying something that I don't want to say, if you see what I mean. So I'm often looking for this kind of, as we talked about before, this sweet spot between control and chaos. But I think it's Cy Twombly said, "In beauty it is finished," and that word beauty is a very back to nebulous, and a very nebulous idea. It can be something obviously aesthetically beautiful, but there's a beauty in ugliness and rawness, or the awkwardness of a Kippenberger or something, and there's a delight in just the visual. And I think when the curation of the drawings, for instance, it's a bit like it's a composition, or as if I was talking in a musical way, or perhaps an editor's job, if you were a writer, of how you rearrange those things. And it's another form of creation, another form of composition. And I think when these big walls are done, I see them a bit like a film or a symphony or something. And there's a beauty to the rhythm of them all. They're not just random. I'm not just, even though I say I can't tell the difference, and I mean that, I can tell when something's got the right vibe. But back to your first ever question, how do you explain what you do? I find it really difficult, because it's a process that you have to live and immerse yourself in. It's not really one thing. I can't really explain it in a single way.
So the show that's up at Hauser and Wirth right now, it's paintings and drawings. The drawings are the studio wall drawings, and I believe the paintings are from the Floral series that you've been working on, right? Can you kind of give us the overview of what that Floral series consists of?
I was really thinking about flower arranging and the way in which a flower arranger will put these stems together. They could have a rose, an edelweiss, an orchid, all in the same vase for beauty. And of course, these flowers come from radically different ecosystems. One's on a mountain, one's in the jungle, one's in a tulip field in Holland or something. And I thought about that in terms of approaches to utilizing this substance, this programmable material called paint. So I thought, well, you could put photorealism next to abstraction, next to this, next to that, and work in a purely aesthetic way. And I also was interested in ikebana, which is kind of almost mathematical Japanese way of putting flowers together. So I was interested in creating a space which is neither abstract expressionism, flower arranging, realism, abstraction. It just seemed like a really rich arena in which for paintings to emerge, a bit like a flower emerges from the soil, from the garden. So it's just a very nice theme. And of course, if you just flick your wrist, you get a petal, and flowers use color and so on. It just, as a painter, it's just fantastic to work with. And it gives me a lot of room to explore these ideas and rhythms that are going through the work.
And I believe I've heard you talk about this before, is just that the tradition of still life floral painting. I mean, it was, at the bottom of the hierarchy of painting back in the day, but it does seem to serve as sort of like an allegory in terms of, these are things that they're dying, right? The nature of arranging flowers in a vase. You've kind of taken them, out of their natural life cycle and have put them someplace where, in a matter of days, they will be dead. And so there's something very heavy about that, and I feel like it sort of ties in with this whole notion of life in the universe and these bigger concepts that I feel like your work touches, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to the Eastern stuff. Flowers have always been this symbol of emergence. They come into being. When I was a child, I was quite a pretty rough childhood, and was quite traumatized existentially about things. Here I am with no rule book, just being seemed extremely uncanny and odd. And I think these vases with flowers standing there, sort of out of context, do have that. It's like a kind of anthropomorphism. They suddenly become a being, and I definitely do see that in the process. And of course, that transience of the individual flower does relate to the movements in art as well. Abstract expressionism is over, and history painting is kind of over, and portraiture has been taken. So it's not just the flowers that die off, it's the very ideologies and movements that we engage in. And so it's kind of, it's everything in there in that show is a meditation on the passing of time, and that journey of the passing of time, and the experience of being here for this kind of blip in the middle between two infinite voids.
Yeah, I think in this show, I think I saw that you also have some sculpture, correct?
There's one sculpture in there. Yeah.
Visually, I could describe it, but could you tell me about that? It's kind of in the middle of the room. Can you describe that for the listeners?
Yeah, there's a kind of a sphere which is about 60 centimeters diameter of stainless steel, polished stainless steel. So it's highly mirrored finish. And it has, it's as if it's attracted these pieces of matter into it, as if they're being sucked into its center. So they're kind of bent and these pieces of matter which are rough, actually meteorites and pieces of the moon and so on being sucked in. And they really are those things. They were. I got them from a guy that deals in meteorites. Got them from Antarctica, where there's no solid matter that happened from space. And so I guess what was fascinating for me is this if you go back a few million years, this matter's flying around in trajectories out there in the solar system, and it's destined to come together in this ball in the gallery. And if you begin to think about the kind of forces that have brought it there, you've of course got the laws of physics, like trajectories, and if you want to get into it, the whole relativity and bending of space-time, gravity, and so on. But you've also got the artistic will, and in a way, it's a way of equating the human will with the laws of physics, that they're both forces that are acting deterministically on this soup of matter around us. And because of the reflected surface, you also see all the drawings reflected in it. One of the drawings is of me looking in the in the object. So it was just a way of bringing all this stuff that seems very cerebral out into a physical object in the center. And all these paintings and drawings were kind of orbiting this object that's about orbits. It was just a way of kind of making it
sure. Simple. And so some of your materials have traveled millions of miles to get to the gallery floor, right?
Yeah, and all creativity is contingent on universal creation. So really everything's miraculous, but the difference is a lot of objects in the world hide behind their utility. We look at a brush and it sweeps up, or a toilet, or whatever it has, it's got a function. But art doesn't. It's just there as a meditation on being. And I think that just brings you into this kind of space where you can begin to think about those things. And I really do believe that every artist is actually channeling that, whether they know it or not. They are just an extension of that kind of creative domino rally, It was just a way of bringing it outside, like, because they can look just like the work can look, especially in the room where that is with all the drawings around, it can look like just a visual diary, as if it's like about the crazy, information deluge we're living in, and that's more of a kind of, for me, that's like ripples on the surface. There's something invisible in there that I'm trying to sort of allude to, which is underneath all the noise.
Yeah. What's the magic in between that kind of holds it all together, right?
Yeah, that invisible thing that Nauman talks about. It's you try to get to the thing you can't depict.
I know that there's probably not an interview that you sit down for that someone doesn't bring up the Turner Prize, and so I've tried to go 45 minutes before asking you, but
the longest someone's.
Yeah. Did your life change when you were awarded the Turner Prize, or did you just go back to the proverbial shipyards of your studio and keep on making work? I mean, how was your life different before and after?
The Turner. Well, first of all, it was 20 years ago. It's something that I keep seeing it after my name and so on, and I'm kind of like vaguely embarrassed about it because I don't think it's particularly a significant thing anymore. However, saying that, to answer your question, the Turner Prize has evolved over the last, however long it's been going, 40 years or something. And when I won it, and around that time, you have to imagine it was a particular time where the YBAs, as they were called, like the Young British Artists, Damien and so on, were around. And so it was quite a big media thing then. Now I think it struggles a little bit to keep that same kind of media centricism. So it's always trying to be novel and so on, because I think things have moved on a little. But it did a great, it did some really good things for British art. I remember going to galleries and things before the whole boom in British art around the 90s. And there'd be like two guys in bowler hats and a warm glass of wine, and no one was interested at all. Like in America, it's seen as semi-serious career. You know, you can be a painter and it's seen as, I'm a painter. It's got a sort of